what brings a data scientist and the founder of a game company to the jungle of the Congo?
We were doing field research for the Wilderverse game that's coming out this summer. So some of that game is featuring orangutans and gibbons in Borneo, but the game is also featuring lowland gorillas and chimpanzees of Congo, specifically a park called Nouabalé-Ndoki National Park up in the northern part of Congo, and very specifically an area of that park called the Gualogo Triangle.
We want to make the game as real as possible, so infuse it with as much, I guess, data and experiences from the people who are actually doing the work in the field. And the only way to do this is by kind of experiencing it ourselves. On the one hand, we want to get as many facts as possible. We also wanted to kind of get a sense of what it's like to be in the forest, kind of get a crash course on being a field researcher, on being an expert in conservation in the area, and to some extent just know what it's like to be living there.
What does it take to get to this research area?
It is a 2-hour flight to a city called Weso. Then from Weso, it's a 5-hour motorboat ride up the Sanga River. That brings you to Bomassa, which is at the edge of the park and where park headquarters are. From there, it's a 1.5-hour drive to the park entrance through basically rainforest and jungle roads. From there, it's another 1.5-hour ride in a dugout canoe on the Ndoki and Mbeli rivers. And then from there, it's about a 17-kilometer or 5-hour walk through the forest, which includes a few river crossings through Blackwater, which brings you to the research camp, from where you now start taking walks to try and find the gorillas and the chimpanzees.
You guys were there to scout some wildlife stars for the game.
Yeah.
Was there one particular animal with a particular story that caught your eye?
I quite like the story of Loya, which is the gorilla at the Gualogo Triangle. He'd been pretty much written off when we first spoke to Dave about our options. He mentioned 2 silverbacks at Mondika site. But he'd kind of written off Loya because the last time he'd seen him, he'd been attacked by a leopard, and he thought he was on his way out. He was going to lose the top position as the silverback, or he was maybe going to die. When we went to see him, he was surprised at how well he'd recovered, and it seemed that almost a miraculous recovery, and he looked absolutely fine. So it'll be interesting to see how he does now, because he's got to kind of build up his group again. When he was attacked by the leopard, I think he lost the females in his group. So now he's just left with a subadult male and a juvenile. And eventually, he'll have to attract females into his group to keep growing.
2 of the chimpanzees that we were watching, one is named Ida, and she is a new mother with, I think, a 2-year-old chimpanzee baby named Ida Lida. And so that's one potential storyline that we're looking at, is following Ida and her as a mother and how Ida Lida grows up. And then the other one was a young female named Riza, who is a really good user of tools. She's even, used sticks like a spear to kill birds.
Can you describe maybe one thing that you discovered that you would have never known if you had just stayed behind your desk?
Apart from getting chased by elephants and experiencing the dangers, I mean, it's very different to having someone tell you that or see some statistic than experiencing it yourself. One thing is the tracking of the animals. So finding the gorillas. This doesn't, as far as I'm aware, it doesn't get recorded anywhere. It's just kind of knowledge passed on in between the different researchers, and it's kind of an unwritten protocol as far as I'm aware. So So finding the broken branches, finding the tracks on the ground, finding the nests, all this is just the build-up to actually, being able to follow the gorilla or the chimpanzee, and then actually start with the data collection. So if we just relied on data being passed on to us, we would have missed that whole bit. So yeah, we could have read about this in an article, or we could have had a Skype conversation with someone, but you're never going to get as much time as we got in the field, 7 days with the people doing the work.
The whole area is run and managed by an organization called WCS, so the Wildlife Conservation Society. So we certainly met a lot of the people that are working just essentially on running that particular park. And then we also met all the research assistants and trackers and people that are, that are effectively doing the work, that are going out every single day, observing the chimpanzees, observing the gorillas, keeping track of what they do and how that relates to, which parts of the park they're in. The trackers, who are the ones that find them, without whom you would never really be able to study, any of these animals. The trackers also serve as the people that help to habituate some of these groups of gorillas and chimpanzees. Otherwise, you would never be able to get, close to them. So we met and interacted with them quite a bit. We also met a group of people called eco guards, who are essentially the anti-poaching patrol for the park, and while we were there was a poaching incident, and we heard it. Although I'm happy to say we didn't see it, but we heard it. And the next day, 15 eco guards, made this entire trek that I was talking about to get out to the camp to head out and see whether they could find out what happened and find the people that shot, in this case, an elephant.
How will the information that you've gathered from the project, how will it now be processed?
So we want to give a sense of the habitat. We want to give a sense of the animals themselves. We want to tell their stories. We want to give a sense of the life of a researcher. And we want to give a sense of the threats to conservation, in that space. So that's the next big step. And what we do is we start to create what's called a conservation journey, where we try and look at, okay, a player coming into the game has no understanding or no knowledge of this. It doesn't mean they don't care, but they just don't have the knowledge and understanding of it. And how do we take them on a journey through the gameplay to a point where a lot of that information has now been communicated and passed on.